Thanks for tuning in to Teach Me to Dad. I'm Kurtis. Really glad you could join us. This episode, I'm chatting to Steve Gibbons, a friend of mine, chaplain in the Air Force. Lots of good stuff we can chat about. If you're new to the podcast, this is what I do. I chat to a dad, a Christian dad, about how he's raising his kids and particularly how being a Christian shapes that. And so I found it very helpful having these conversations. I hope you do. Bear with me. My tech skills is never that good. So the audio will always be, every once in a while, it'll ruin your ears a little bit. But the substance should be good. If you want to reach out at all, I'm on Instagram, Teach Me to Dad podcast. There's a website in the link to the in the description to the podcast. You can reach out from there. And before we get into it, I do want to mention Fruit. So Fruit's an app, and they're the sponsor of our show. They're a Bible reading app to help busy Christians get into the Bible and grow. So if you're like most dads and you don't have much free time to get into the Bible and make that a daily habit, Fruit is an app to help you with that. So I highly recommend checking them out. There's a link in the description to join the wait list because there's a community aspect to it, and so they'll bring you into the Fruit community. I highly recommend getting it and having a look and giving it a go. On to the episode. Steve, teach me to dad.
Teach me to dad, I am a dad and I need some help. Teach me to dad, I'll never learn this by myself. Teach me to dad, I am a dad.
Here we are, Steve Gibbons, sitting down, having a chat. Good to have you with me.
Thanks for having me, Kurtis. Good to be here, mate.
I am pumped to be able to chat to you and chat to you about being a dad. Kind of bit of a link from me to you to place you a little bit. We spent time at college together, but I've kind of known you through your family and mates with your brother, and probably the first, maybe my earliest memory of you, which isn't that early, it's not like childhood buddies, but was we did a 16K run in town that I remember training for with a bunch of people, and you happened to be on town for the day, and so you jumped on board and won.
I do remember
that. That was frustrating for everyone.
Dean, I think, who may have been training with you, had been in the car on the way to the start line, just letting me know that I didn't have to do this if I didn't feel ready.
Yep.
He was scared for me that I might hurt myself.
Yep.
And it gave me all the motivation I needed.
Yes. So that was cool. On a similar vein, your brother ran a marathon this year.
Yeah, that's right.
About a week later, you ran what did you do?
And then I swam 3.8 kilometres, rode 180 kilometres, and then ran a marathon.
Yeah, good on you.
I did notice that. I felt bad for him.
That's funny. No, that's cool. That's good achievements all around. There's plenty of kudos to go around.
Yep.
Anyway, but was keen to chat to you. Keen to chat to you about being a dad. I've seen a little bit of you and your kids when we were both in Sydney at a similar time, but haven't seen heaps of it. Your family, you've got 4?
Yep, 4 kids.
Give us the ages, give us the team.
So 3 boys and a girl, married to Hayley. Tommy, who's 9, almost 10. Harvey, they've just gone through their birthdays. So Harvey's now 8, and Johnny is now 6, and Betty is now 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. And at the moment, you're working as a chaplain in the Air Force out Newcastle way.
That's right.
All right.
Yep.
So, how long you've been in the Air Force? What's your rank? Okay. What should I call you? And then why'd you go into chaplaincy as well?
Yep. So I've been in the Air Force now for 19 years, and I joined when I was 19. And so just last month, I ticked over half of my life has been in the Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah. And I originally joined as a pilot and then transferred to become a chaplain. And I've been doing that in Williamtown for the last 2.5 years. And then prior to that, we were at Bible college together and doing some training. So why I transferred from Air Force to being a chaplain, I actually did join the Air Force with Christian ministry of some sort in mind in the future. And it wasn't until I was joining the Air Force where that kind of came onto the table for me as a possibility. There was a couple of things that meant that I thought that still joining the Air Force as a pilot was a good idea before then pursuing Christian ministry. So all the while I was flying, I thought that I kind of knew that that wasn't going to be the thing that I was going to do forever. And so it came time and I transferred across, and chaplaincy was the ministry that I stepped into.
Yeah, cool. Now, there'll be heaps of dudes that'll just want to know a couple of Air Force things about you. So I've got to do them first.
Okay.
So thing one for me, should I salute someone in the Air Force? Or is that like only Air Force to Air Force kind of thing? If you were in uniform and I saw you, should I give you a salute? Is that respectful, or is that like cultural appropriation of the Air Force?
It's definitely just Air Force to Air Force.
Cool, good to know.
Except a low-key one would be appropriate.
Like a just two-finger flick?
Little...
Yeah, wow.
Off the forehead, that could, an acknowledgement that you're the military guy and I know you're military,
cool.
and this could be.
But generally speaking, a salute is not for me.
The full-blown salute is not the thing you want to be doing,
Yeah. What's your rank?
Yeah. So I'm to be honest, I'm a chaplain. That's the rank that I get right now.
Yep.
And so, and that's my title, my proper title. And it will stay that way no matter what position that I get kind of put into. But there is some administrative reasons why having a rank behind that is helpful. And to answer that question, I'm a flight lieutenant, which is the equivalent of a captain in the Army or or in the US Air Force that people may know a little bit more from movies and things.
Yeah, yes. And what did you fly? Give us some plane stats or something. Tell us some flying stats.
Well, I flew the C-17 Globemaster 3.
Oh, that's sick.
Most of the time we just call it C-17. And it's a large transport aircraft. It was based at RAF Base Amberley, just outside of Brisbane, just outside of Ipswich, really, is the base. And, some stats for it. It can carry 102 paratroopers. It has, it can carry a tank. It can carry 3 helicopters. The range typically fly for around 11 hours, but it can also be air-to-air refueled. So if there's a tanker, we'll come in right behind it and they'll fly a boom down and it'll connect with our aircraft. Will be connected, 30,000 or 20,000 feet above the ground.
Wow.
Flying along and take on some fuel to fly anywhere around the world.
Is that wild? Have you been a part of that?
I've seen it done.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is it like watching a whale mate with a whale?
To be honest, yes. It's a little bit like that.
Not that I've seen it, but I imagine animals anyway, and you keep swimming. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Do your kids want to go flying, and would you ever take them flying? Have you ever taken your kids up in the air?
My kids have been able to go on the C-17 my first two when I was still at the flying squadron. We had two kids then, and they came for a little flight. I don't think they really remember it now. I think they'd want to go flying. I'd like to take them flying.
Yeah.
But
I'd like you to take my kids flying.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. So I'm sure one day I'll hire an aircraft and we'll go flying somewhere.
Yes. Oh, that's cool. Give us a sense. What has well, you've kind of been in. I imagine it would have looked different at different phases. But what does it look like? What does family and Air Force look like? Because I imagine that's my initial thoughts on that is away lots is a big thing.
Yes.
Is that right? What does it look like to do family and be part of the Air Force?
For most people in the military in general, being away from family is just a given at certain periods of time throughout the year, and there can be years where you'll be away for larger amounts of time in that given year for whatever reason. Mine, I've had different stages as in family. In my first year of marriage, I wasn't away at all. So there are some positions where it's a little bit more like the 9 to 5. That's not typical, certainly not when you've got a young family. And then when I was at the flying squadron, I was away a lot, but for short periods of time and with short notice. And I think overall that was one of the harder ways to do it, because you were constantly adjusting to routines and rhythms, and the family didn't know whether you were going to be around that weekend or not.
Yeah, that's quite destabilizing. That's hard.
Yeah. And so it makes relationships just in general quite difficult in that setting. The other one is, that you're always going to be away in these few particular months every year because of whatever exercise that you're a part of, or that at the start of the year, the exercises that you're going on or the deployments that you're going on are on these particular months in the year. So you'll be away for a longer period of time, which will have other challenges. Just that one away and then back again.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I was keen to get your thoughts. For two reasons. Partly, I'm keen to just hear your thoughts on being a dad. You're someone I respect, keen to hear. But there's a unique experience that you bring that I'm interested to learn from, particularly as your role as a chaplain. I imagine you speak to a lot of dads.
Yes.
About their life, and I just imagine there'd be a wealth of an experience that lots of us don't have, that you'd learn things from. You'd learn positive things, negative things, lots of things that you'd take back to your own family. And so wanted to kind of gather some of that experience and learning.
Sure.
Yeah, and learn a bit about that. So give us a sense of it. I don't know, even just as I say that, what things come to mind? You go, oh yeah, these are some of the learning experiences from that.
The other group of people who I'll speak to, and we all actually speak to this group of people, is people who have had a dad.
Yes.
And so the chaplain office is quite unique, that people come into it and are quite vulnerable and share things that are happening for them. And so that has given me perhaps that extra unique insight. I'm having deeper level conversations with people that others aren't typically having in any given day. So that's brought out a kind of greater level of insight into the things that have shaped each person, their own dads, and also for some of the people who might come and speak to me, the things they're struggling with as dads or in whatever way.
I would imagine, pardon my interruption, that space, I feel like, guys are not known for their ability to open up.
Yeah.
I would imagine that in the space within the Air Force would be the safest, like the most safe a man would feel to open up. Does that capture something? Like you'd get the most out of someone in that environment?
It is a very unique environment, and it offers people a great avenue for people to know that they can come and share. There would be other environments that would get there, but it would take so long to arrive, a lot of trust to build up. And so I'm really banking on the trust which has been built up from the position that I'm in and the space that I'm in. And so there might be other, long deployments with someone, long periods of time, one-to-one, and you're starting to, grow in your trust of one another, really. And so then you feel like I could share this with them. And there are some also other, what's the word here, policies type thing, kind of protections for people, like confidentiality. They know that I'm not going to go and share this with someone. And so I suppose, all that, if people are worried, what's this guy about to share, there'll be all confidences kept as I share people's stories.
So go back to it. Some of the things that you've picked up from that.
My initial thoughts as you asked that question about the guys that are coming to speak to me and what have you heard and how might that shape your own parenting, I think and it might be because I'm a dad and I'm listening to them and I want to learn from them as well. I hear the stories where it's the dad who's separated from their kids for whatever reason. It might be a broken relationship. It could be because of the work that they've been away, or there's also sometimes a posting, because that's another element of being in the Defence Force, being posted around the country. So constantly moving, again, destabilising, but destabilising for the whole family. And some get to a point where they say, how about you just go and the family will stay here? So they're separated because of a work requirement. And then sometimes those guys come and share about the difficulties they're experiencing in their family and the separation, and the dad is desperate to have influence in his family and in his children's lives, but because of the separation, he can't. He's trying to work out what to do or how to get that back. And I think in those meetings, in those circumstances, I'm hearing for myself, do whatever I can to keep an influence, to keep the ability to influence my kids for good.
Yeah. To
be able to shape and, mould and speak into and have a relationship with my kids. So I think that's the one that immediately probably jumps out.
You'd be quite hyper aware of the influence you have, and I imagine don't take that for granted and really feel that.
Yes.
Feel that task. I have a strong influence on these, and how good that I do.
Yes.
And can.
Yes. Yeah. And I will not allow them to push me away, and I will forever be pursuing them.
Yeah.
And so that, and even when they don't want me in their life, if that, you're like, sometimes your kids can get to that point where they're saying that hyperbolically.
Yeah.
No, I'm here. I'm not going to let you get away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I have some questions to poke around, but I do just want to kind of open-ended to start with to see what comes naturally. Are there other things that come to mind as you think about those experiences and how they shape your own parenting?
So I think, again, from my office, the other thing I might come back to one, the interesting thing I've noticed within my own parenting is having the ability to speak to someone who's struggling with a particular thing. There's something going on in their life, maybe a crisis. And it's always a little bit daunting when they come into my office. I'm thinking, how am I going to help this person? And certainly in that first kind of meeting with them, the majority of it is just me listening to them and hearing what's going on for them. And I'm surprised a lot of the time, though I've now become used to it to a degree, is that often that's all that it takes to get them quite a distance towards a solution that they might be able to take the next step. Where they arrive in the office a little bit, the world's just fallen apart on them and not sure where to go. And just from the process of listening to them, they can leave the office thinking there might be a solution here and I've got a plan to move forward.
Yeah.
I just listen to them. And I can sometimes, I do my best to implement that with my own kids.
Which, tell me if that's right, trying to be slow to give answers and advice, quick to just listen and then see what comes of that.
Absolutely. Quick to listen and see what comes of that.
Yes.
I've been implementing this one lately, which is the kids come crying about whatever it might be. This person hit me, I've scraped my arm, whatever it is. I'm so sorry that happened. Do you want to cuddle? And they take it and move on. They just get going.
Yes.
And they don't want actually anything more than that.
Yes.
And so I've tried to do that as much as possible. I mean, there's like, to extend that to the nth degree, there's a bunch of crises that go on and that's not going to be the resolution. And then I've got my own kind of stuff where I'm not in chaplain mode, nice listening mode. And so, yeah.
I think that, I think that's something that naturally becomes a female stereotype, not wanting this problem solved, but just listen.
Yeah.
But probably is actually just a universal human thing. Maybe guys are naturally quicker to try to solve a problem. But I wonder when we actually have the thing, if it's pretty universal, we would like to just be heard.
Yeah.
That's actually a big big need that we have that
Yeah.
goes a long way.
I can think of plenty of circumstances in my life where I did just want to be listened to, where I actually think I might want a solution. As soon as someone offers it, I go, nah, definitely don't want a solution.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
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 And one other thing that I might implement into my parenting from chaplaincy, I think the influence that we can have on one another, and I can see people come into my office who have been hurt by other people, and they'll describe those circumstances, and so then I get a picture often, not from always the person who's in front of me, but I can see the ugliness, I suppose, of the world, if you like, that people have towards one another, the brokenness, and so I just recognize that's not what I want my kids to be like, and so then when I see them doing that to one another, I might try to coach as much as possible. That I've seen that play out over a lifetime. I've seen an adult come and speak to me, and they'll recount a story. I'm talking to my kids now. Adults come and speak to me, recount stories of people who have treated them just like the way that you're treating, and it's not good. So I think some of that stuff comes out. One more, probably just in helping, a lot of the coaching, helping my kids to communicate with one another, to acknowledge the different things that are going on in them, maybe their emotions and stuff, and putting a name to that, and then being able to speak to their sibling or whoever it is, and then for their sibling to be able to hear them and respond. And so I'm coaching a lot in their own individual conversations. I'm finding myself, and I wonder, I don't know if that's normal, if everyone does that, or whether that's a bit of
Flesh that out. Help me understand that a bit more.
So an example might be, I'm sitting and I hear in the other room two kids just shouting at one another, and they're saying the same thing over and over again, but both of them. And that irritates me. Great. So I'm going to I find myself stepping into that room, or stepping into that space, and quietening it down, and asking one child to speak at a time, and helping them to articulate what's going on for them. And so rather than just yelling out, stop, 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 stop forever, okay, what is it that you would like your sibling to do? Oh, I want them to stop. Yes. And why? Because it's mine, and they're holding on to some toy. It's my toy and I want to play with it. Okay. Speak to the other sibling. What did you hear your sibling say? They said stop, and it's their toy. They want to keep playing with it. Now, what did you want to say? And they'll say, I want to have a turn. And helping them, okay, and why do you want to have a turn? And I don't know, just I feel like I'm coaching these disagreements a lot in helping people to communicate, in helping them to communicate. And I think maybe where that's coming from in chaplaincy is that I can see a lot of the things that people are coming to speak to me about are these sometimes interpersonal conflicts, where it could be resolved at that level of just helping people to be able to communicate more clearly. And so I see that in the workplace, and then I can come home and I'm alert to it, and I see it in my home as well. And so I want to try to help my kids to be able to communicate well with one another, especially when they're not getting on.
Yeah.
And so, as I say, I don't know if that's everyone's doing that already.
Yeah, that's interesting. So am I right if I'm saying back to you, a big thing that you kind of are doing over in your Air Force chaplain role that you kind of want to do to your kids is almost helping people learn how to solve their problems, and in some of the way with kids, learning how to deal with conflict, learning how to, you're not stepping in and just solving problems for people, but trying to give space for help nudge people to solve their own problems.
Yeah.
A similarity.
Yeah. And I suppose if we were to name that problem more specifically, helping people to not just solve their own problem, but off that recent example of helping to work through the conflict that they're having. And I suppose based on that previous example there of listening to people, maybe there is helping people to solve their own problems, but it was a little bit different there. It was actually just responding to them in a way that they would want to be responded to as a human.
Yes.
Yeah.
What issues, I'm just curious if you have any thoughts and insights in this. What issues with your kids are you happy to just leave unresolved? And what are you like, nah, they need to learn how to do something with this. You know what I mean? Like, when are you happy to just let things go? Or are you like, nah, man, you let that go. I've seen what that becomes. You're going to be a bitter, angry man.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think what do you let go? What do you need the kids to work through? What do you think?
It's difficult for me to be able to look back and think of something where I've got some sort of well thought through thing about that, and like an exam, and because it depends on me and where I'm at and able to let go, and so the context might change it.
Yeah.
So the other day, like, two kids were, fighting. And in this case, actually, they were wrestling on the ground, and I chose to let that go.
Yes, settle it in kid court.
You can settle it in kid court on that one. Now, I don't know. And so why did I do that? And I was just told a story about the verbal stuff going backwards and forwards. And I did choose to step in on that one, but it was probably more what was going on for me, because that, when they were verbally going on and whatever I was trying to focus on, it was disrupting me. Okay, now I need to go fix it. Whereas when they're wrestling on the ground, so I'm probably alert to the fact that what I'm letting go for them to solve themselves and what I'm stepping into, a big part of it is probably just going to be what's happening for me at the time.
Yeah, yes. I always have a dream of having a dojo in the house. And when there's a fight, take it to the dojo.
Take it to the dojo.
Having some kind of thing, like it's like in some like prison show where they like throw down a chicken foot is like a challenge. Like, here, if there's a conflict, all right, deal with it in the dojo. Come back when it's resolved.
Yes. Well, one of the rules in our household is no wrestling on the tiles.
No wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
No wrestling on the tiles. I love that.
Because that might take us, that might cause an injury that worse than the other.
Yeah.
But there are some issues that I can see for my kids that I think it might be that they're particularly struggling with, that and they actually almost recognize it as an issue in themselves. And so, my boy the other day, it was his birthday, and he said something like, I don't want to be angry on my birthday. And it's like, yeah, I can see why that would be a goal for you. Let us help you in that.
Yeah.
And some of my other kids might not be as self-aware as to the things that they're wanting to work on. But I reckon with a conversation, they probably could identify a few things. And it's just that those things that they're particularly continually struggling with. And so now when you say, what are you going to let go? And what in the moment that they struggle with it, I'm probably more prone to jump in and go, in the heat of the moment, this is the thing that we're going to work on, remember? And whereas it would probably be better to have a bit of patience to recognise this is the thing that we were going to work on, and when it's all kind of passed over, not to then just forget about it, but to return to it in a conversation.
Yeah.
And say this is that thing that we were talking about. Yeah. But I don't think that there's any kind of like on these core issues they must be. Though they probably are. You'd be able to identify them. But
what do you think about this, right? Here's two contradictory thoughts running through my head.
Yeah.
One is those kind of sibling conflicts are where kids, as they grow up, learn and test these interpersonal skills, how to deal with conflict, how to whatnot.
Yeah.
Seems like this is where they play and test and
try.
Yeah. There's one thought. The other thought is, I think, the grown-ups I know, how many people have great interpersonal conflict skills with their siblings? That feels like a situation that never quite nails it. I feel like that's probably where everyone's worst at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is that a futile relationship to focus on? Or is it like, no, this is where you learn and develop? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, I think.
I don't know what to think.
Yes. But tell me the contradiction again. It's that siblings are always having interpersonal conflict. Is this what you mean?
You would think that if siblings have spent 20 years conflicting with each other,
Yes.
that a 21-year-old siblings would be so good at their interpersonal skills together.
Right.
I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that are good at conflict.
Yes.
I bet you they're not with their siblings.
Right.
What is that space?
Yes.
Is that just a space of chaos? And always will be? Or is that where you play an experiment to then go and put it into practice with other people?
Yeah. So many things going on in that scenario. Maybe the family members who know one another so well, and so they've alert to all of the different buttons that they can push at whatever one time.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and the idea that, it's not that conflict will never happen, like we're alluding to, but how to process it. And so, maybe there is the grace of the family learning how to do it and doing it well.
What do you think, from talking to different dads in the Air Force, what do you think are some commonalities you see across various fathers? Kind of common desires, common struggles, or common regrets? Yeah, what are some things that you see? Man, this is happening all over the place. This is quite, really, really common across the board.
Yeah. It's interesting. There is this common desire that of wanting kids. Not always straight away, but it still comes. Though there's exceptions to everything, I'm sure. But I've been interested in that, having joined the Air Force as a 19-year-old, so have gone through periods of time where no responsibility was a good thing. In the 20s, that was the sought after thing, as least as an amount of responsibility as possible, certainly in the family area. To now into late 30s, many of those same guys who I joined with, they love having kids. They love being a dad, and that's something that they desire. So just even the fact of wanting to be a dad, I think is there.
I find it really interesting. Yeah.
Again, not universal. But well, at least there's exceptions to that, and I don't know everyone and what's going on for them. Yeah. I've noticed recently, and I don't know whether it's because I'm a chaplain and therefore this is the reason, they know that they might get a receptive audience to their opinion, but the values that people want to instill in kids, and so they'll say, Chaplain, that they might show some level of dismay at current society and its lack of values and morals, and I'm really worried about my kids. And so I hear people start that conversation with me quite a lot, which I find interesting. These aren't people they're not religious people. They're not from a faith background themselves. But they want values and they want morals for their kids. So,
do you get a sense of what kind of values and morals they mean when they say that?
And interestingly, I think the reason that they say it to me again, I hear it a lot, not from everyone. And again, it might just be those people who they know they're going to get that receptive, or they think they're going to get that receptive audience from me. And so therefore, the values and morals they're tying to it is the ones which seem to come out of a religious background that's tied to it. and in particular, the kind of Judeo-Christian framework. So I think that's the thing that they're looking for and they're hopeful for.
Yeah.
For their kids.
It's interesting.
And again, that's why they're speaking to me.
Yeah.
about
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Yes. Is that why? Is that a type that goes into the Air Force and the military, like conservative people? Is that a type, or is that just my mind of like? I have in my mind like an American military person is also like patriotism is mixed with Christianity in America. Is that a thing in Australia or not really?
Well, it is. It is a bit of the stereotype there, which is always the stereotype has some level of truth behind it. But there would be plenty of people who wouldn't say describe themselves as conservatives or certainly not conservative politically or whatever they might mean by that. So, I too have had that kind of thought that if not all, the majority, perhaps a little bit more conservative. And sometimes that brings with it, tradition, and tradition's a big part in the military. And so, and therefore, the values that we've had in the past, morality that we've had in the past, and so they're longing for that. So yeah, perhaps there is more people in the military like that, but I'm not quite sure exactly percentage-wise.
No, that's cool. First, let me test an assumption and then a question. Because your role takes you away for periods, you have big stints away, my assumption would be that you have a hyper awareness for being present when you're around. Is that fair? Would that be right? When you're around, you're like, well, I'm around, so I need to be around.
I don't know if one causes the other. I think I do try to be around when I'm around. And whether that's because I've got periods of time away or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, anyway.
So what do you reckon that looks like? What do you try to do to be present, around?
Okay, I see.
Give your kids, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm curious because I reckon you will have thought. Yeah. Anyway, I'm interested.
Yeah. I mean, we do enjoy spending a lot of time together as a family. That would be, again, I'm not quite sure. This has been my experience of growing up in a family with my dad and wider family, and so therefore I do it, and I see a lot of other people do it as well. So I'm kind of saying these things, assuming they're kind of, a lot of people are doing them. It's not that amazing, but also there'd be some that aren't. But it would come out in certainly dinner times, having dinner together, and sometimes that extends through to we're having breakfast together, having lunch together. Then on the weekends, we typically are spending a lot of time together. So yeah, certainly Sundays as we come to church, and then even Saturdays we're around the house, or if someone's got to go somewhere, they'll be taking someone, or we'll all go. So that's happening. I think I'm in a job which, and even I'm in a job firstly that means when I'm not deployed or sent away on an exercise, that I'm around of an evening. In the mornings I typically have to head off pretty early, but I'm around in the evening, so I'm at home. Yeah, and it's not just dinner, I suppose, at the table. It's also then helping go through the processes of getting kids through the bath and into bed. And so actually maybe it's the stage of life that I'm at with my family that actually I feel like that's a bit of a requirement to be there. So there isn't too much time apart from when I'm at work. When I get home, I'm on. Yeah. I'm needed to be there. Presence in that way. But yeah, I suppose in when I am there, therefore engaging with them. Books are pretty big in our family, and so offering to read someone a book is always time well spent. So I'll reach for that.
Yeah. Maybe one more question. What kind of dad do you want to be to your kids?
Yeah, right. There's a lot. There's probably a lot that comes out just in who I am. I want to be a role model to my dad. I want to be a good example to my dad. To my kids. Yeah. So I want to be a role model to my kids. I want to be a good example as a dad. So I'm setting the type of person who I'd want them to be. They're the things that I'm going to be working on to make sure that I'm that. I was going to say something else. The type of dad. Yeah. The person in my own personality. In my personality, I want to be a dependable person. I want to be a dependable dad. I think there's some of the things that come out.
Yeah, dependable, good role model. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, there's heaps of stuff that I'm keen to ponder about, Steve. My kind of learning way is take a bunch of information and then chew on it for the next week. And so there's lots of stuff in that I'm really keen to chew on.
Cool.
So appreciate being able to pick your brain, hear a little bit about your dadding life.
Yeah, good chatting with you, Kurtis.
Thanks for chatting. Lots of good stuff there, that episode with Steve. A couple of things that stood out to me. Do whatever we can to have and maintain an influence on our kids. That really stood out to me. And he imbibed that kind of idea with the idea of being a role model at the end, working to be the person you want to model to your kids. So lots of that stuff really stood out to me, and those are some key ideas that I'm keen to take away from that.